everyone. Welcome to episode 118 of Formidable Opponents, a show that pits three people who have known each other virtually their entire lives in a series of conversations as we argue what is best in a variety of fun, engaging, and critical pop culture topics we all debate about. I'm Randall, and with me as always, Bob and Joseph. And this week's topic is Best High School Movie. Happy graduation season, everybody. As kids, high school movies for us, particularly in the 80s and 90s, were a staple of our education. High school movies were a blueprint of what was to come. Hijinks, first loves, angry female coaches trying to dismember you during shower scenes. This was a genre that effortlessly captured the roller coaster of our young emotions. The struggle we had trying to identify who and what we were, and the overall chaos that goes along with adolescence. These films preserve a time capsule of our own memories and represent a period of our lives where everything seemed monumental and life-forming. High school is such a microcosm of society, a bustling ecosystem where identities take root. Movies gave these rites of passage meaning. We learn by watching the on-screen teenage situations, awkward encounters, and coming-of-age chaos, which all unfolded in under 2 hours. Mostly played by actors in their late 20s and early 30s. So, whether you're a nerd, band geek, jock, stoner, we welcome you. If your PE coach wore red or blue dolphin shorts that fastened at the waist with long tube socks and also taught you about the American Revolution, we welcome you. If you never questioned why we ate square pizza with corn, peaches, and milk at 11:30 a.m. and ran a mile around the backstops at 1 in the afternoon, we welcome you. And if you ever picked up a dead frog during biology lab and made it do the "Hello My Baby, Hello My Honey" song and dance, we welcome you. For this week, Formidable Opponents debates and discusses Best High School Movie. With me, as always, are two guys who had most of their classes in the portable buildings. Bob and Joseph, how are you guys doing?
Slackers.
I love that you were like, every reference you just made was from like the 80s. You just told everyone how old you were.
Did you guys ever have those portable building classes? I always had my math class there.
No, they have them now because that we were out of room due to so many damn students in each high school.
But do you remember back in the day they used to shun the low performing kids to those portable buildings?
They're like, what are you taking? Wood chop? Oh, over there. See those old shitty ones covered in fleas? You need to go to the.
I had an English. It wasn't a group of bad kids. It was just that's where the English class was. So I had one English class in a portable building. We had a lot of students too when we were in high school, man.
I was taking, all these honors courses, but for me, math was my kryptonite. So I always took like the fundamentals of math and remedial algebra and all these other classes. And they were always in the portable building with like the cholos and the stoner. So I was like, they were like, what's this nerd doing here?
I just want you to know, if you ever need change for any money, Randall, I'm your guy. Since you're so terrible at math.
I just want to learn.
So guys, we're talking about Best High School Movie. We're commemorating and congratulating all graduates this year, whether you're a college or high school graduate. And so we thought this would be an appropriate time to talk about this topic. And what I want to start off with, guys, are what are the elements, or I should say, what elements do you think make a high school movie memorable or successful?
It's got to be. Yeah, go ahead, Joseph.
Sorry, no,
you
go
ahead. God damn it, rock, paper, scissors. Right,
1, 2, 3, go. Ready?
1, 2, 3, go.
Paper. This fucking always happens. We're doing this.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Ah, shit. Okay, I'll go. All right.
Leave all that in.
yeah, that's hilarious. That's what she said. The movie's got to be relatable. Any high school movie, graduation movie, it's got to be relatable. It's got to remind you of when you were in high school. It's got to remind you of like a specific time, a specific friend, a group of friends. An embarrassing moment, a romance, something. It's got to be something that you can relate to. And I love the fact that they make them so funny because high school in itself was hilarious. I mean, now that you look back on it, you can really laugh at yourself. I'm sure you all have those kind of memories that you can laugh at yourself about, but still do. Yeah, I think it's got to be relatable, man. You got to find something to connect with.
As far as like high school movies, we all go through high school. Hopefully everybody does. And there's always the, you're always looking for, especially depending on what generation you grew up in, you're looking for something that's, relatable to, like Bob said, to what you experienced, or to maybe what you felt in high school, and maybe, see something that make you think back on good times, bad times, and funny times. And because it really is a crazy time in our lives. We build these friendships and whatnot, and it's really something to go back and enjoy and experience. And that's what, these movies hopefully do for you.
I agree with both of you. The characters have to be relatable. I think in watching these movies, you have to see yourself in some form or fashion, in something, in a character or a friend that you were very close to in these movies. Iconic moments. There has to be a highlight in this movie where you say, like, yes, that exemplifies a high school 100% during that time, exemplifies a high school moment. Funny. I don't want to watch a soap opera. I think they have to be funny in some sort of, because high school is funny. I mean, that's what it is. It's crazy. You're nervous, you're anxious, but it's also very silly. And the plot, the plot can be as scaled as you'd like, but it has to be impactful and compelling. There has to be a lesson learned, because that's what high school is all about. There has to be character arc, and there has to be, and you notice the common theme is that friendship is like the ultimate theme in all these movies. And there has to be something there, whether you're with a friend, you break up with a friend, or you find a new friend in these movies. And I think that's what they're all about. And that's
Find
what
the
makes
meaning
it so
of friendship.
Yes, exactly. How do you think high school movies have evolved over the years? How have they changed?
You mean from like the movies that get made today? Then
Yeah, like over the decade.
Talk about things that we could laugh about back then. We've already talked about this numerous times, so I'm not going to go into detail. It was a different generation. I mean, I don't watch these movies because I have no desire or need to watch new high school movies, but I've seen commercials or trailers for new movies that take place in high school. And I will say this, like, it's great to see inclusivity. Is that the word I'm looking for, Randall?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Diversity, inclusivity.
Inclusivity in these movies.
No bathroom hall passes. Yeah.
No fucking, no very large ropes that you're walking around with to go to the restroom. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of characters that are not so one dimensional. I don't think it was an issue with like some of the movies that we're probably going to talk about, or movies from back then. I think hey, that was how they were written. But I think and plus add the whole technology, the new technology, the whole TikTok generation. It's crazy, man. I honestly wouldn't want to be in high school right now. Like, there's probably a lot of shit to deal with. So and these movies are more highlighting that, and I think that's cool. And I hope like it helps people, like how we just mentioned about how we relate to these movies. I hope these movies are relating to kids today, and hopefully, either teaching themselves to laugh at themselves or to be better, I guess.
Did Joe say that was good? That was heartfelt. No, I definitely think there's a huge difference between, like, let's say an 80s high school movie and something like,
oh, no doubt,
that you would see in the 2000s or late 90s. Definitely the rules have changed. Comedy is different. People are a little more sensitive about certain topics and certain things. You can't use certain words anymore. Again, the comedy was everything was meant to be funny back then. The bullying was different then than it is probably now, or like. And I like how Joseph mentioned the whole technology thing. Yeah, like people back then. I love that line from y'all have seen Hot Tub Time Machine, right?
Yes.
Where like the young dude's like, well, how do I find you? And I mean, well, how do I get a hold of you? You have an email, you have a phone. And she was like, you just come find me. He's like, what? Like it's like crazy. Yeah. Remember back in the day, you'd have to. Oh, these people might be at the movies tonight at 7, so you'd be like, well, fuck it, let's go to the movies at 7. See if we get lucky to run into somebody. And so the movies are definitely different now with the technology, with cell phones, with like we saw in American Pie with the webcams. Like a lot of shit is different. A lot of shit that you could probably get away with in the 80s, you definitely can't get away with now due to cell phones and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely there's a big difference.
I remember there was this girl that I liked in high school, and this was before the internet, and that's how old I am. We didn't have
color too, before folks, it was black and white. And, kids would wear suits to school.
She had her own telephone, so I would open up the phone book and I would see her phone, and I would stare at it like Lionel Richie in the Hello video. Like, should I call? No, I'm not going to call.
He had the same mustache too, folks.
Kids talk differently, and I think we've run hot and cold with high school movies. So in the 80s, it was great. Now we're getting, they disappeared for most of the 90s. They came back in the late 90s, held up in the 2000s. But we were in a long drought. And I think the way kids talk in high school movies nowadays is a lot different from the 80s and the 90s. I think a lot of writers were writing them as, quirky adult characters, where now if you watch a high school movie, they're acting like high school kids. Like Superbad is a great example. They're making jokes that are age appropriate, and they're acting like they would in high school. And I think that's what we're targeting now. We're not making them into these, complete sort of adult characters with problems that they shouldn't have. They're more dealing with everyday, anxiety and difficulty and problems that high school has. And by the way, the bathroom pass thing, we had a vest, like a neon vest for our
That's
bathroom.
what we meant by that.
It's like ours was like something it was like a
crosswalk vest, right? Like,
we had a crosswalk.
Construction worker.
We had like a lanyard with like a thing. We had a lanyard that had like
we had everything, dude. I had the vest, the crosswalker vest, or crosswalking attendant vest, the lanyard. I mean, we had it all. Like we really did.
That's so insanitary.
Something to identify you as like you're out here for a reason. And if you're doing something other than that, your ass is going to ISS.
Like you're wearing the piss vest. What the fuck are you doing walking around the cafeteria? Get your ass to the restaurant.
Why are you eating snacks? Why are you smoking in the back?
People had to wear that in stalls. How unsanitary was that? I don't know. Who knows?
You see like the big guy come back from the restroom sweating and be like, here, take his vest and go to the restroom. Like, never mind. I don't need to go.
You know what I started doing, dude?
I'll get a UTI, right?
I started I know Bob probably did this too. We started because we started to make it cool. So we'd kind of like hang it out of our pocket like a bandana or something, or just put it in your pocket and be like, "Hey, where's your vest? It's right here, motherfucker."
Yeah. Right there in my pocket. I'm putting that thing on. Ruining my structured shirt.
Exactly.
So it brings us to the next question. What kind of person were you in high school? Get deep on this one, yes.
Bob was an asshole.
No. You weren't an asshole.
I said Bob was an asshole.
You guys went to high school.
I was an asshole.
No.
You guys graduated together, high school from 1999 to
junior high and high school.
Okay. Yeah, 2003.
So,
we graduated 2003.
Yeah, okay, high school.
We were football players. We weren't. I don't know if we'd be considered jocks. Like we were fun. We were nice to everyone. I had friends that were jocks, that were nerds, that were cholos, or gangsters, that were
no.
Whether we're into black metal, right, Joseph?
Exactly. Whether people want to believe it or not, we were probably labeled on the outside. We're probably looked at as jocks because we.
But on the inside, we had a heart of gold.
I mean, I think what was cool about and I'm not trying to say we invented any,
the piano key necktie.
Yeah. I'm not trying to say we revolutionized the whole thing, but I know a lot of our friends, a lot of people Bob and I, there were more of us than anything else. And they were just people who hey, we were into sports. We liked sports, but I was also very much into heavy metal music. So I had metalhead friends. We had classes with everybody, Cholo kids. We were cool with them too, because we had classes with them. We talked with them. Hey man, we'd ask, hey, what did you say?
Have you heard the new Snoop Dogg album?
I didn't fucking hear what he said, man. I wasn't paying attention, everything, dude. I mean, so, and I know that's probably going to be hard to believe, but it was, and that's kind of who we were. I guess if you wanted to put a label on it, because we played sports, people probably called us jocks.
I was an absolute nobody. I mean, complete. I was complete middle of the road. I had three really good friends. One played football, one played basketball. The other one was in the honor societies. They're all very smart. I did nothing. I just went to class, paid attention to movies, TV, and music. That's why I'm on this podcast, because I wasn't paying attention to history and English. I was just, pop culture was my entire life.
Chicks, Randall. And the phone book, right? The phone book.
And I'm with you on in the portable buildings, I took the remedial math, and I got to, make friends with other kids, cholos or whatever. And I was like Miklo from Blood In, Blood Out. I might be white on the outside, but I'm brown on the inside. So
you wanted my chop?
Chicano, eh?
Did you bring somebody a chop, bro?
No, I did not. My theater arts teacher wanted me to join the drama club, and I was so self-conscious and insecure that I declined. I know. I was like too like afraid to do anything. I remember my counselor senior year, she would go to all the honor classes and she pulled me out of my class and she said, "Your transcript has absolutely nothing." She's like, "You have to join something." And so that's when I joined the Future Farmers of America. And I mentioned this on the podcast earlier.
Yes.
They treated me very well, but I was not showing animals. I was not, doing anything with what they were doing, but they were very nice people. I now realize, I wasn't a bad looking kid. I even ended up dating a former classmate in my 20s who never approached me because she thought I was distant in high school. So at least I was someone's Jordan Catalano. I will say that. But other than that, just middle of the road.
Who?
Guys, any embarrassing high school stories?
There's a ton of embarrassing high school stories. There's a shitload. Probably too many to mention. Probably too embarrassing to mention. I have thrown up at a party. I'm sure we all have, but I definitely threw up in front of everybody at a party. That might be one of my most embarrassing moments. What about you, Joseph?
I don't think it's embarrassing. I think it's funny how I got caught stealing the chair.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, see, we're good kids until Joseph decided, I want this desk chair for my house. It was some old lady that taught computer lab there. Way to go, Joseph.
You stole a chair from the computer lab?
I was going to say
he borrowed it and returned it.
I succeeded, and it was later returned.
You weren't succeeded because your mom caught you with the chair in the back of your truck, Joseph.
It got out of the building. It got to my house. So I succeeded. I was then, we'll just leave it at that. It was returned.
I have two very embarrassing high school stories.
Go ahead.
I was in Spanish class and I was always very self-conscious. I was the kid that my legs
okay, coconut on the inside.
my legs grew before like my torso, so I was very just weird looking. And I remember freshman year I had to go and do a speech in Spanish class. So I went up there, I was making a bunch of jokes, and I noticed people were laughing a little too much. I was like, what I'm saying is not so funny. Then I saw a girl point, and she was pointing at my crotch, and my zipper was all the way down when I was making this speech. I had the tidy whities. They were, I wasn't hanging brain like Creed said. So when I turned around to pick up the zipper broke off. And so I was like standing there with my zipper wide open. I untucked my shirt and I still had one more class after that. So I sat in the back of the class. I had a very nice Spanish teacher and she was like, "Are you okay, mijo?" I'm like, "No, my fucking zipper's open." I mean, sitting back here.
It was like Chapolin. The camera zoom in on you, do the...
And then my last embarrassing story was freshman year. And my dad was dropping me off, and he dropped me off in front of the school, and I was walking out, and I left a poster board for a project in the back seat. So my dad was driving off campus. Well, he wasn't off campus; he was still on campus, and so I was catching up to him. And then when I got the door handle of the car, I fell forward. Like my momentum took me forward because I was running. And I did a front flip and I fell in front of a group of people. So I opened the car door and I closed. And I said, "Dad, let's get the hell out of here!" Like a bank heist, He's like, "Don't you have school?" I was like, "No." They just saw me fall down on my ass. Keep driving.
What do you say?
I just went home and I was absent for the day.
So let's go get tacos at home.
So
that's badass if your dad to take you home.
Yeah.
Remember my dad used to we'd get up early, let's go eat breakfast at your grandma's house before school.
Oh.
And we'd have breakfast and he'd be like, "Hey, I'm a little hungover. You want to just go home with me? Let's go home, skip today." Fuck yeah, badass. Thank you, Dad. Dad, that was a good memory for me.
Let's go to our honorable mentions, guys. What do you have for your honorable mentions?
I'll start off with a newer, well, not newer, but Superbad. This is like that big resurgence, man. Superbad is hilarious. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. It's really, really funny. Got to talk about The Breakfast Club. Obviously, I think you can't have a list without The Breakfast Club on it. Varsity Blues, Joseph, Texas, baby, Texas football. I loved Dazed and Confused. I think that movie is just an amazing one as well. Different decade. It takes place in the 70s, but absolutely love it. Friday Night Lights, again, I'll couple that with Varsity Blues. I do think Varsity Blues was better than Friday Night Lights. The book was really good. The movie, I'll talk about the movie. Napoleon Dynamite, another great high school movie. Super stupid. I didn't think I'd like it, but I ended up loving that movie. And lastly, I'm going to talk about Porky's. Porky's was such
Porky's.
Wonder why they call her Lassie. Oh, you'll find out. It's got a little mole. If I could just see it. It's got a little. I saw that movie when I was way younger than I should have seen that fucking movie. I was like 15. Hilarious high school movie, dude. Joseph, what do you got, man?
I think I literally have the same ones as you. I have The Breakfast Club, Not particularly. You know what? It's a good movie. I don't. I can see it here every now and then, but obviously a great story. Different individuals coming together from different backgrounds. So I think it's perfect. Obviously high school movie. Varsity Blues, of course. How can you not mention? I got 10 Things I Hate About You, Napoleon Dynamite as well. I think that's one of the funniest unexpected movies ever that we watched together. I remember all of us getting together and watching that at your house, Ran, late one night. I don't know why. I think we had just gotten it from Hollywood Video. Surprise.
The local video store.
Surprise, greatest movie ever. I got Superbad as well. And of course, Friday Night Lights as well.
So for my honorable mentions, I start off with Clueless and Alicia Silverstone. Wow.
Oh, shit.
On a tear. She had The Crush. Another movie that I liked of hers was called The Babysitter. A very dark movie. Yes. The Aerosmith videos.
Yes.
She was, and that movie came out in 1995, which was my senior year of high school. So what were your thoughts on Alicia Silverstone?
Oh, dude, Alicia Silverstone was on top of the world. I think. Yeah, we kind of mentioned this a little earlier before we got on. Yeah, the Aerosmith videos, the Crush movie is such a, it just shows how great an actress she was. She plays this completely crazy character, completely polar opposite of what she does in Clueless, which is like this ditzy, fun, high school kid. She had some great acting. I thought she would be on top of the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And be a superstar, but she kind of did, kind of fade out there the late 90s, I didn't think that would happen.
I loved her.
You know what it was? I know exactly what it was. Batman and Robin, that fucking movie, dude, ruined everybody's. It was sucked so much it ruined Alicia Silverstone's career.
How is Barbara related to Alfred? It's Barbara Gordon, not Barbara Pennyworth.
So that was the least of their fucking problems, Joseph.
I also had Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The climax was a homework assignment, very memorable. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Phoebe Cates, speaking of crushes, that scene where she gets out of the pool to Moving in Stereo. Just a classic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great song.
Montage.
Breakfast Club, in school detention. I served time in school detention. I know we always had the meanest coach that would hold in school detention. But Breakfast Club was a great Saturday morning in school suspension movie that dealt with just drama and all these things that really taught us that high school students weren't just stereotypes. They had emotions, they had feelings, they had hopes and dreams. Just a great movie. Dazed and Confused. I had 10 Things I Hate About You.
All right.
I had Grease. Once again, we have to talk about.
Oh shit! I knew he'd mention it. I knew it. Creative Little Phil told me, she was like, "How much you want to bet Randy's gonna have Grease?" Because we were watching. Doing some research earlier. I'm sure he is.
It's one of the best high school movies ever.
They're all 40 years old. Give me a break.
Michael Tucci, who played Sonny, you're going to tell me that guy was 18? He had
got a wife and kids at home. 5 o'clock shadow.
He had a 401k. Come on. They could at least, this was 1978 when that movie came out. They could have, done something. They didn't have the benefits of CGIing them to look younger. It is what it is. I read an article where the casting director admitted that this was intentional because Grease is a fantasy, not a documentary. Whatever. You were just trying to cast the biggest stars, and they all happen to be
fantasy.
They all happen to be over 30. But still, you cast high school students. Shouldn't they look like? They shouldn't look like they can tear a meniscus when they're doing a dance scene. That's all I'm saying. I had Napoleon Dynamite, Better Off Dead. You guys remember Better Off Dead? Great fucking.
Is that the one with Mark Paul Goss? No.
That's Dead Men on Campus. This is
okay.
Yeah, it was funny when he was smoking weed.
John Cusack.
I got some beers. Let's drink them.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. 16 Candles, which hasn't aged well in some regards, but still. Dead Poets Society, Mean Girls, Superbad. One of the last comedies before Gen Z told us it was not cool to laugh at funny things anymore. I had House Party. Yes, the bad guys in House Party who looked like they had full-on divorces, mortgages, and that yearly physicals. These guys were not high school kids.
And then the badass dance-off at the end.
I had Heathers, Carrie, and Say Anything. And then, we were led to believe John Cusack could play a high school senior for the entire decade. Whatever. And then lastly, I had Porky's. Not a fan of the trilogy, but that original Porky's.
The original one was fucking funny.
High school kids really going across state lines to a whorehouse. Yeah.
That was hilarious. Or sticking their dick in a shower drain, which is what the fuck is going on?
So that's our honorable mentions. We're now going to our selections for best high school movie, and I got the first pick. So my selection is Back to the Future, 1985. Guys, in 1984, if I would have told you that one of the greatest movies of all time was going to be about an old guy who hangs around with a high school kid whose mother wants to seduce him, you would have never believed me. But let me tell you something about the future. We all know the history. Eric Stoltz, who, by the way, starred in the underrated John Hughes high school movie, Some Kind of Wonderful, was originally slated to star as Marty McFly. And if you look
He was great in Anaconda.
He was great in If you look at the 5 weeks of footage they shot with Stoltz, it was like a Stephen King film. This was supposed to be a comedy. They had to recast. They originally wanted Michael J. Fox, but he was pulling heavy duty on Family Ties because at the time, Meredith Baxter Birney, who played his mom on the show, had just delivered a baby. So her screen time was minimized and Fox was carrying the show. He had to. So the 5 weeks with Stoltz as Marty McFly passed. Meredith Baxter Birney comes back full time to Family Ties, and a true watershed moment happens. Michael J. Fox, the TV star, now becomes Michael J. Fox, the movie star, because he's now available. Don't feel sorry for Stoltz. In the sequel to the sci-fi horror movie The Fly 2, he plays a character named Martin Brundle who transforms into a fly. So basically, he ended up playing Marty McFly after all. Anyway,
Superfly.
Two TV stars are the main protagonists in this blockbuster. Unheard of at the time because they were very separate, right? You had your movie stars, you had your TV stars. Now we had two TV stars becoming full-fledged movie stars. The aforementioned Fox, of course, on Family Ties, and Christopher Lloyd, who showed he was a very capable actor. Just watch him on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But he was best known for playing Reverend Jim Ignatowski on Taxi. It was a TV show that alerted me it was time to go to sleep during its Sunday night reruns. Anyway, we know the plot. 17-year-old Marty McFly is accidentally sent 30 years into the past in a time-traveling DeLorean invented by Doc Brown. I know what your argument is going to be, fellas. It's a sci-fi movie, not a high school movie. It's a sci-fi movie. But, by the way, another underrated high school sci-fi movie, My Science Project, check it out, from the 80s. Weird Science, also a sci-fi movie, and that's a John Hughes movie, also a high school movie. So
everything John Hughes did with high school movies.
So even though there are sci-fi elements, this wasn't anything unique for a high school movie. It still tracks. Where in the rules does it state that all high school movies have to be just comedies, which this is, or dramas, which this has some elements of? So it covers all these bases and more. Then you might say, but the focus isn't about the high school experience. What is more high school movie than the climax happening at the school dance, which this movie does? What is more high school than the bully picking on you and making you do his homework? What is more high school than the nerd triumphing? By the way, another underrated high school movie about the nerd triumphing, 3 O'Clock High. Great movie. What is more high school than an actor in his mid-20s playing a high school student in the 80s? I mean, it's all there. At least Michael J. Fox looked like a high school kid. Ian Ziering on Beverly Hills 90210 looked like he owned his own house and several other properties. Anyway, my argument would be that this movie is only missing one element that truly connects it to the movies of its ilk at the time. That's the coming of age element. So that trope was so oversaturated by the John Hughes, let's watch the character navigate through the uncharted emotional waters of trying to discover who they are, that we forget that just about none of us had the emotional maturity and mental capacity to discover who we were at the time. Remember, John Hughes was writing these teenagers like they were in their mid-40s. So while it lacks some traditional themes, I would argue that there are elements of angst, identity, friendship, and social class. It's really about destiny and choice, which are entities we all navigate through in high school. Hell, the very premise itself is rooted as a high school movie. Writer Bob Gale was thumbing through his dad's old yearbook, and he thought about how it would be cool to meet his dad when his dad was in high school. That's where he came up with the premise of this movie. It's a memorable, highly quotable film. Even though it's a lighthearted film, it deals with some very serious topics: abuse, sexual assault, I guess incest too, right? The core message is that the heart of this movie is the ultimate common connection we all think about in high school, and that's the future is not set in stone. Our own insecurities and impulses can be overcome, and there is a world out there that will not define you the way high school does. And that's what Back to the Future gives us. What do you think, guys?
Wow, you really went way too deep into this thing. No, Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies, but you're right. It's not a high school movie. It's a sci-fi movie. That's easy. This is an easy argument.
I knew you were going to make that argument.
What is the premise of Back to the Future? I need to go back in time to make sure my parents have sex, so that way we are still around.
And they're in high school.
Yeah, I mean, shit. Everybody was in high school at that point in time. There is no lesson learned from high school. They're not learning anything from high school. It does take place. As much as it takes place at a high school, it takes place in the town square. It takes place in the fucking DeLorean. It takes place in different time. It's a travel back in time to save my parents type of thing. When you made this choice, I was like, okay, I can see it. And the more I've looked at it, I'm like, I just don't see it, man. I don't see the connection like all the ones we mentioned, the Breakfast Clubs, the Superbads, the Varsity Blues, Dazed and Confused. It's about life and coming of age at that point in time, being a kid and trying to figure yourself out. Like, he already had it all figured out. He knew what his parents were supposed to be. He's trying to help them have sex. So this is climax was the right word to use, Randall. And Destiny and Choice, favorite strippers at the club. I'm just saying. I think that it's great choice of characters. Michael J. Fox is amazing. Christopher Lloyd, amazing. The choice for parents was really, really cool, really, really great. And I loved the premise, but I just don't see it as a high school movie. I'm sure, like, you explained it really well. You did, but no, I don't believe you. Okay, so Joseph, what do you think about Back to the Future?
You missed a golden opportunity. I fully expected you to go with the Breakfast Club. And I would have supported that choice and praised it. Based on our listeners, half of them were going to say, if you had selected the Breakfast Club, half of them were going to say you got to pick the right one, and the other half were going to say it was either me or Bob. They're going to have to decide between me and Bob. Greatest science fiction-esque comedy drama, bro, you got it. Like, because I don't want to talk bad about Back to the Future. It's a great fucking movie. You know what Bob said, it only has its here and there moments of high school life. And I mean, it's cool. We get to see that high school life in the 50s, 1955. Yeah, 1955. So that's a nice.
I'm late for class.
That's a nice reminder to maybe some of the viewers at the time who saw this movie. It's a story of a guy trying to find his way back to his own time and save his existence. And I don't think that has anything to do with high school life and high school drama and the things that we like. What part of this did you relate to would be my question. But I mean, we all know we love the movie. It's a solid movie. It's probably one of the top 5 greatest movies of all time, greatest trilogies of all time.
Nah, the third one's kind of shitty.
I like it, but it's minimal high school life. I mean, I know they attend high school a few times, and yes, the big moment happens at the dance. He's got to get his parents to the dance together. They got to dance on the dance floor at the big, sock hop and whatnot. But it lacks on that part, man.
Enchantment under the stars dance, Joseph.
Under the sea.
It lacks.
I know.
It lacks. I think you had gone Breakfast Club all the way. I think if you had gone Breakfast Club all the way, dude, you would would have been a solid selection, of course, because that's a great story about kids from different backgrounds all trying to survive that moment in time in high school, with pressure and whatnot. So this is about Marty McFly trying to get home.
I do
saving his friend and mentor in the end. Trying to save his friend who dies. Trying to who he thinks dies. So
I will say this. It's not a traditional high school movie when you think about let me think about the high school. We all go to the John Hughes and we all go to the raunchy comedies of the 80s and the late 90s to the mid 2000s. But when I think of Back to the Future, I think of Back to the Future as being a near perfect film. And by being a near perfect film, it touches on every element we love. It's got action. It's got comedy. It's got, it's a buddy picture. It's got heart. It's got romance. It's got everything you want in a movie. Now, it's got desire. I also think I like The Breakfast Club a lot. It was a close second or third for me, but The Breakfast Club, it takes place on a Saturday. I won't knock it for that. But it also has Judd Nelson, who's got gray hair, is playing a high school kid. And I think The Breakfast Club. But its honorable mention was Grease. Give me a break. I think The Breakfast Club is a very mature screenplay. And high school students, even in the 80s, maybe didn't talk as well as that. And we're talking about believability. This is a movie where Emilio Estevez screams and he shatters the glass. So there's some elements of a fantasy in that movie as well. But the thing about Back to the Future is that I think a lot of people say, well, you know, when we think of high school movies, we think about high school kids with their friends because all these movies are about friends. And yes, he doesn't have the traditional high school friendship in this movie. Who's he friends with in high school? His father. He's trying to navigate his father through the high school, you know, through the high school through the uncharted waters of high school to help hype him up, to ask the girl of his dreams out, to help hype him up in order to get his self-confidence, to be a goal-setting, trend-setting individual. So I think that the fact that he doesn't have friends from high school, a lot of people say, well, it's not a traditional high school movie, but it is, because his friend is his family member, his father, his mother. They're trying to defeat the bully. The climax of this movie is in a high school. Everything that drives this movie takes place because of these high school elements. All the
DeLorean.
Yeah, and all the sci-fi stuff is all surface stuff to get the movie and the story going along.
So that's what I think. Central focal point of the movie, though, the sci-fi.
Yeah. Randall's really trying hard to push this through. No, we're going to put a poll up, and everyone say, like, what?
To me, it's a great.
I see your elements, though, dude. I see your elements. I see the bully. I see the high school quote unquote best friend, because George McFly grows up thinking and remembering this great friend who showed up named he knew him as Marty, though, right? Like
that's why he named his son Marty.
Calvin Klein.
I mean, yes, he called himself Calvin Klein, but he called him.
He didn't
Marty.
call himself. They called him like the underwear. The mom was trying to see his huevitos.
So I see the elements, dude. I see them there, but I think that you can't deny that it's a science fiction movie, and that's not a problem with that. It can
be both. It can be a high school science fiction movie.
This isn't weird science.
No, it can't.
Weird science. My science project, Weird Science. That's why I named them, because I knew you were going to say this is too unique. No, these movies have been done before. You know,
but it also has to do with two best friends that are in high school that are creating a chick, and they can't get any girls in high school.
His best friend. All right, we got to move on. Definitely a high school movie. Anyway, Bob, what do you got for us?
Definitely a high school movie. This one's easy to talk about. I went with 1998's Can't Hardly Wait. If you were in high school or junior high between the mid 1990s to the late 1990s, this is a movie that hits pretty hard with you all. This is probably one of the most memorable high school movies other than Joseph's Selection. And it's one of my favorites. It's got a huge cult following now, I think more than ever as you get older, going back and watching it. It's just, oh man, it's got so many elements of a great high school movie. The different groups of friends, the jocks, the nerds, the love-struck kid who's kind of a nobody who wants like the pretty girl to notice him. I love how it takes place at a house party, a graduation house party. So it's all encompassing of what high school is like. Now what? It's the last day. We're all together. Now what? What do? We celebrate. We cut loose. High school's over. We're going to tell each other how we really feel. We're going to pay back that bully that's been Mike Dexter's a god. Mike Dexter's a role model. Yeah. Mike Dexter is an asshole, right? So I love that element. There's just so many fun elements, and the cast, guys, the cast. I mean, you will not find another high school movie with a cast like this one. Jennifer Love Hewitt, Ethan Embry, Seth Green, Lauren Ambrose, Peter Facinelli, Jason Segel, Jamie Presley, Freddie Rodriguez, Sean Patrick Thomas, Donald Faison, Selma Blair, Leslie Gross. I mean, like, it's a who's who of up-and-coming actors at this point in time who all went on to do something great. Ended up on either a TV show or a movie or something awesome. Leslie Grossman had a really small minor role, and then she ended up doing great things, being on American Horror Story later in the 2000s, which I thought was really cool. Hardly even recognized her at that point, but it's got a great cast. It's got a great soundtrack. I think that's something that Back to the Future doesn't have. Like, the soundtrack of Can't Hardly Wait reminds me of high school music. Yours reminds me that Huey Lewis doesn't shut the fuck up. All right, he keeps singing nonstop. Goddamn, can we get something else? Mr. Sandman was a delight. Was a delight to get a cut away from Huey Lewis and the News. Okay, so I love the soundtrack. Again, you got Blink-182, Third Eye Blind, Smash Mouth, Busta Rhymes, like everything that you grew up Listen, Run DMC's on there. Guns N' Roses, Paradise City. Great fucking scene where the nerd is drunk. I can't feel my legs, and he gets. I know this song. This guy used to tutor in math. Used to make me listen to it. I love that he gets up and sings, and like the nerd becomes the superhero now guy. Like all the girls want him now. He was a nobody through all his 4 years of high school, but at this party, him drinking and him having a great time, he is now the guy. I love the lessons learned about love, about life, about who you are in high school is not necessarily who you're going to be in the future. Got a great storybook ending. It's comedy, it's romance, it's like the new age John Hughes movies. That's what I would say. The John Hughes movies of the 90s. That's what we get in Can't Hardly Wait. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a movie that if we're outside drinking and somebody mentions it, I'm like, we have to put it on because it's so fun. I didn't even mention Melissa Joan Hart, who's there, who couldn't even have a major role, and she chose such a minor role, the yearbook girl. And I love that. If you all go, guys, look at the cast. When you look at the cast members, they don't have names. Like Melissa Joan Hart's known as yearbook girl. Jason Segel's known as watermelon guy. Like best friend 1, best friend 2, thug 1, thug the dog. It's Seth Green's friends. Like I love how they're giving those labels and they're not like actual character names other than the top like 4 or 5 people. So it's one of my favorite movies, man. I want to know what y'all think about it. I want to know if you have a negative opinion on it, but I love it. This is a new age, prototypical high school movie, man, and I love it.
Can't Hardly Wait. So when I think about movies, like big, momentous high school movies that most reflect the era I went to high school to, Clueless and Can't Hardly Wait are sandwiched in between because Clueless came out in 1995. Can't Hardly Wait came out in 1998. Although I had graduated already, these were people that was an era I could still relate to. So these are my peers. I can definitely say a few good things about this movie. The soundtrack gave us Smash Mouth's only decent song, so I'll go with that. This is definitely a movie about the holistic high school experience as told through many characters' point of view. And Bob, you had mentioned several of them. I will say this about the unrealism about the movie. The girls in my high school...
Traveling back in time, you mean, to 1955? Sorry.
The girls in my high school didn't look like Amanda Beckett and her friends. They looked like the chicks from The Facts of Life. So that's... If you're talking about DeLorean's flying, the chicks in this movie did not look like the chicks we went to high school with. Anyway, so maybe I would join a club if Jamie Presley went to my high school. I don't know. I can't say enough about Jennifer Love Hewitt. She was riding this huge wave at the time. She was beautiful. She was the it girl. She can't act her way out of a paper bag, but I mean, did she have to? I mean, this wasn't Stanley Kubrick. This was a fun popcorn movie, and that's why I think it's very endearing to a certain generation. It's light. It's almost too light, and I feel like the film team of Deborah Kaplan and Harry Elfont played this movie a little too safe. It was very sanitized. It's about a high school party, and no, it doesn't have to be Project X. But it could have been more like Booksmart or Superbad or Dazed and Confused. Those parties, I think, were a little more realistic towards what a high school party is rather than this one. I felt like this movie was too caught up in the stereotypes of high school students. When we had 3 very good stories that were running parallel to one another, with Amanda and Preston and Kenny and Denise and William Lichter's story. These were all very good stories for the movie. And I felt like too many characters left the main characters too light. I felt like they were trying to jam pack all these high school stereotypes that we were being taken away from some of the main, I guess you could say, ideas of this movie or the main characters. It's very much a product of its time, which for the purposes of nostalgia, that's excellent. But it's also a year too early. And with this film, we get, like I said, a more sanitized version of the biggest high school party of the year. And a year later, American Pie comes out, and we have an 8-year run of funny R-rated comedies culminating with Superbad, especially dealing with high school. Even a TV show like Euphoria, which is not a comedy, but it's about high school kids who are all in their 20s, I guess. That show makes Can't Hardly Wait look like High School Musical. I do like Can't Hardly Wait. I think it leans too much on caricatures than it does on experiences, and it tries to load them in 100 minutes and 100 characters, and we don't spend enough time or focus really understanding any of them. I do love Lauren Ambrose's character. I felt she was the most complete character of the film. I would have loved for her.
You would.
I would have loved for her to have been leading this project. Maybe it's because I related to her because she's the most misanthropic, I guess. But
because you had a trench coat in high school.
No, I did not. Okay, so they reached for some laughs. They had that that joke with the exchange student. And come on, when exchange students come to America, they speak better English than our high school.
Hey,
kids.
sexy girlfriend. You're talking about that? Yeah.
The exchange student in this movie was like a second round pick for the Minnesota Timberwolves who never set foot outside his home country. So bad stereotype there. I think this is a second or third tier high school movie. Doesn't mean it's bad. But I think it's a bit overrated. But then again, I think of Jennifer Love Hewitt at the end of the decade and how I would have done anything for her, even tolerated her failed singing career. I get it. She was big in Helsinki or whatever. I do like this movie. I think it's a cute movie. It's a cute high school movie. But I don't know if it's the defining high school movie that a lot of people sort of give sentiment about. But what do you think, Joseph?
I think you've said some terrible things about Jennifer Love Hewitt.
I love her, especially during this year.
I still love her. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. You know, I don't agree with a lot of what Randy said. I mean, I can see his.
No, I have a rebuttal.
Okay, but yes, it's a high school party. It's the final party of the year. But I love it, man. I love each and every character. I think there's a nice story mixed in it. Yes, it's a high school party, but we see all these characters. And I think that one of the things that we talked about, I know one of the things that we talked about was one of the things that makes a high school movie, great and memorable is the relatability to the characters. I think everybody is represented in this movie. I mean, there's everybody. There's the wannabe white boys. There's, the stoners. There's the
popular kids,
popular girls.
They're never fleshed out though. They're like wrestling gimmicks. But go ahead, go on.
Don't interrupt me. Everybody's there. I mean, you got each group, and it's. I think it's everybody's represented, and I think that's cool. The funny one of the bad, even the environmentalists are represented. The girl that gets pissed off and it's cutting up the
yellow sheep.
I mean, it's great. It's a great what she was doing, but it's not. It is what it is. It's not supposed to be. I don't think it was intended to be more than what it was. It's a high school movie party. It's the final party. It's with one individual, the quote unquote. I mean, it's supposed to be about Preston, but other characters still show each person's individual story. They don't necessarily intertwine with each other, but you see everybody's trying to do something on the last quote unquote night of high school. I think in the end they all learn from it, which is kind of an aspect that we talked about. Preston, one last ditch effort to hopefully get the girl to notice him. I think it was from the beginning, right? It said that she was immediately Mike Dexter's girlfriend, and it was completely out of reach. But at the end, he's finally got an opportunity to maybe get her to notice him. William seeks revenge. He gets that done. I don't know what I can't remember. What's Preston's best friend's name? I can't remember her name in the movie. The girl that's like Lauren, the one that ends up with Special K.
You're talking about Lauren Ambrose.
Denise.
Denise.
Yeah, Denise.
Yeah.
Denise in her own way, she hates everything, and there's a lot of people. There were kids like that in high school. There's kids, still kids like that.
I was one of those kids. Yeah.
But in the end, even she sees
she gets closure.
She gets closure. Exactly.
Her character I liked. Yes.
Finds her. Yes. Don't get me wrong. She's a great character. In the end, they all learn to be better. I'm sorry, guys. There's a lot of rain. I don't know if you can hear that. And I think that's a really cool aspect. The only knock I will say against it is it's a high school party movie. It's the final this is just for the purpose of this podcast or this episode because I love this fucking movie. It takes place at a high school party, the last high school party of the year. High school is done for these kids, so we don't see too much of that aspect, that day-to-day life. So I guess that would be my only thing. But I love this movie. I do. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I can watch it whenever it's on. We can pretty much quote it line for line, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely memorable for us.
Before we move on, we can all say that John Hughes is pretty much the king of high school movies,
so.
right? I mean,
yeah.
He's the man. 16 Candles. I think that this was kind of like an homage to John Hughes, and it's that style of movie. And I know you use the word, it's cute. Your fucking movie, the worst word they use is they call somebody a butthead. You know what I mean? Like I don't.
Well,
I
it's not
don't
about the
see-
cussing.
I know, but I mean, like that's cute. That a family-oriented film is Back to the Future. That's the one you watch with your grandparents and your parents and like your cousins and your theos, and there's nothing to really be ashamed. This one had a lot. That had Seth Green losing his virginity. You know what I mean? People breaking up. Everybody trying to sleeping with Amanda Beckett, including her cousin. As soon
So
as
they got the
break up-
incest thing, like Back to the Future,
so
right?
Yeah, but like I mean, there's a lot of different elements to it. It's a John Hughes movie. You can't compare if you're gonna compare Euphoria to fucking Can't Hardly Wait. Let's compare Euphoria to Back to the Future. That's Back to the Future is like the Mr. Sandman if we're gonna talk music comparisons, and this one's like Get It on the Floor.
Great
That would be
soundtrack. It
Euphoria.
does.
Yeah, so I don't see the comparison there. I think it's a standalone. I think it's more closely related to a John Hughes style movie than it is a raunchy comedy, which is American Pie.
But Back to the Future, set in 1955, set at the school dance, setting's very different. Late 1998, late 90s, 1998. This is a high school party. And I think and like I said, I do like this movie. I'm not trying to knock this movie as a bad movie in and of itself. I think it's a great movie. I love watching this movie. It's like you said, it's got a huge rewatchability factor. A lot of stars before they became stars. Jerry O'Connell makes a funny cameo. I mean, it's got some great moments in this movie. The one thing I'm complaining about is that you got a movie like American Pie, or you got a movie like Superbad, or any of these high school movies that come out later. This movie sort of missed that track where it's like, oh shit, we could have done X, Y, and Z and made this movie even better. And yes, it is a John Hughes inspired movie, but it's inspired by John Hughes. They don't write like John Hughes. They don't act like John Hughes actors, but you're right. It is very much a John Hughes inspired movie, but I think it lost the element of saying it was here too fast before high school movies of the late 90s and 2000s really took off.
Raunchy.
Yeah, and it's not a fault of the directors. It's not a fault of any. But I think if this movie comes out 2 years later and maybe it changes some elements, we'd see a lot more memorable things and we'd see a lot funnier things. But this is the kind of movie that you could watch with your high school kid and be like, hey, isn't this kind of funny? Isn't this kind of adorable? Look, this guy's love struck and all these funny things are happening. Whereas go ahead.
The sex and the candles in the restroom. You want to watch that with your high school kid? I don't think so.
Well, they didn't have sex, but he was trying.
Yes, they did. Seth Green had sex with
they did not film that, so thank God.
They both had their shirts off. I will say this though, but like I know what you're saying. Like, oh, they missed the mark because American Pie was so much more raunchier and it was so much more relatable, and that's what they missed. Ask them how well it did for like the rest of the series. They made like 8 movies and maybe 2 of them were successful.
I'm not a fan. I know the trilogy did okay, but American Pie is a complete standalone movie. And speaking of American Pie, Joseph, what is your selection?
Shout out Back to the Future 2. Throw it in his face.
Shout out to Chris Owen for playing Chuck Sherman in my selection, and the guy who steals everything in Bob's selection.
Kleptomaniac, yes.
Kleptomaniac. Okay, so as kind of Randy alluded to, I chose American Pie, the coming of age comedy released July 9th of 1999 with a who's who of young Hollywood stars. We got Jason Biggs, Chris Klein, Dusty Lee, Thomas Ian Nichols, Sean William Scott, Eddie K. Thomas, Allison Hannigan, Tara Reid, Natasha Leone, Mina Suvari, and the most understanding best dad of all time, Eugene Levy as Noah Livingston.
The best character on that fucking movie.
I know, exactly, right?
He was great.
The vet of the young cast to keep everybody in line. The story centers around a group of 5 classmates who attend a fictional high school who make a pact to lose their virginity before high school graduation. That is the basic write-up description. But as we know, Stifler wasn't necessarily in on it. I don't think so. And he really was kind of just the other friend of everybody. I wouldn't call him one of Jim, Oz, Kevin, or
he was
Finch's
Oz's friend because they played lacrosse.
He was Oz's friends, but I wouldn't call him their best friend. But that happens later on in the series, which I think is great. He becomes, really a great friend to everybody. Look, this is a movie that was of its time. This is a movie that was of its time, most definitely. So yes, I understand more than likely it doesn't get made today. I think our general audience is that of individuals who share our age group, so they can agree with me on this selection. Anyway, heart of the story is the pact to lose one's virginity. But mixed in is an actual great story that takes place throughout the high school scenes in high school life, pretty much the last, I think month of the school. Aside from all the hilarious hijinks, pranks, one-liners, and funny moments, there is a story of high school kids not sure what's going to happen in life after they graduate, which is something we all experience. Oddly enough, we look at Jim's character as the focal point of the movie.
Well, I thought it was Rookie of the Year guy.
Here I'm getting.
I think Jim's definitely. Go ahead.
He's kind of the focal point of the following movies that he ends up being like. But for the first one, it's really Kevin's character, who's going through a lot of his own created chaos, which with getting into a fight with his girlfriend, realizing in the end that he is in fact in love with her. He's not just trying to sleep with her. Eventually getting dumped by her. In the end, because of the forthcoming distance that's going to happen between them, as life's going to go on after high school, they're both going to different colleges. That's a fucking thing that we people have to really deal with. Not down here because we all just went to the same school. Oz himself, he wants to prove that he's more than just this jock stereotype. He's in meeting the girl, the choir girl, as she's called, a girl who helps him realize that he's more than that, and ends up falling in love with and having a relationship with her in the next movie. Jim fucks a pie and Finch fucks the bully's mom. So it's all there, man. It's a great classic heartfelt story about youth and consequence and
pies.
growing up and pies
and milfs
and growing up, and moving forward with your life after high school. And of course, above all, the rule for all of us who grew up in this age, frame, if someone says this one time, you say, "God damn it, Bob, you disappoint."
What? If someone says what?
This one time.
Oh, this one time. You forgot to say this one time at band camp.
Okay, that's what you were supposed to say at band camp.
You didn't make it. You didn't. Come on, man. You didn't set me up properly, sir.
Anyway, guys, what do you think?
So let's talk about Sean William Scott and how he should have been a bigger star for 20 more minutes. No, we're not going to go that route. So back in 1999, my best friend told me about a movie that was coming out in July called American Pie, starring a bunch of no-name actors, and this movie was going to be a mega smash comedy hit, and he was absolutely right. He wasn't lying. American Pie, the screenplay was written in about 6 weeks by Adam Hertz under the title Teenage Sex Comedy that can be made for under $10 million, that most readers will probably hate, but I think you will love. And many aspects of the film was based on Adam and his friends' time in high school, so you had that authenticity in the script. There are few scenes, I'm talking about every movie I've watched in a theater, that I can remember that elicited huge movie theater audience reactions. I saw many people cry when James Garner died in The Notebook. I heard the entire crowd screaming and cheering Darth Vader when he saved Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. And I witnessed...
How old are you? Jesus.
Very old. I witnessed people go crazy when Samuel L. Jackson got eaten by a shark in Deep Blue Sea. But all that pales in comparison to the collective reaction of a scene where a teenage boy was fucking a pie on his parents' kitchen counter. And there was no subtle experiment with the pie. He went to town on that family dessert. He treated that pie like it was a side piece he took to a resort in Punta Cana. American Pie was a throwback to these 80s high school movies where the goal for the characters was just to have sex. Movies like Risky Business, Porky's, Losing It, Joy of Sex, The Last American Virgin. And we saw that recently with Blockers in 2018 with John Cena and Leslie Mann, which I thought was a good high school movie too. By the way, in that list, two young Tom Cruise movies there before he met Xenu, and he was just like us. Anyway, being a kid in the 80s, I looked forward to high school because I thought I was going to be in a quest for manhood. Turns out the only girl I had any connection with in high school was The Legend of Zelda. At 22, I wasn't too far removed from high school to still connect with this movie to some degree. And it had been over a decade that this premise was the plot of a high school movie about losing your virginity. So the raunch was back. We were talking about earlier. I really wish this could have been a standalone movie because the sequels kind of ruined the characters for me a bit, just like in the Hangover trilogy. The things that this movie did for webcams, exchange students, awkward talks with your parents, pies, and friends' mothers, it got a solidified market corner. I mean, now a whole web search is on mothers, but we won't get into that. So the pluses, I love Eugene Levy. He was perfect as the dad, my favorite character in the movie, and it was great seeing a familiar face with all those young actors. Jason Biggs, Sean William Scott, Shannon Elizabeth, Allison Hannigan, Eddie K. Thomas, Tara Reid, Natasha Lyonne. Good to see her on a comeback. And Mina Savari. They were all excellent. I just can't get over the casting of Chris Klein. By the way, Bob, we were talking about that TV show he was on Netflix.
Yeah, the worst country fucking accent I've ever heard in my life.
The name of that show is Sweet Magnolias. I think we called it.
There we go, Sweet Magnolias.
I think we called it Down Home or Home Country or Reba. I can't remember.
No, I think we said Go Home, Chris Klein. Go
Reba. Home. Or Reba.
I like Chris Klein in Election and Just Friends. It's not about him being a bad actor. I think it was just a huge miscast.
He's a bad actor. He tried to play a softie, and he was terrible at doing it in this movie.
He looks older than the other male leads. He looks older than the other male leads. That's because he's younger than Jason Biggs, and he doesn't look like he would hang out with those guys. Let's be honest here. You're telling me you couldn't cast an 18-year-old Jake Gyllenhaal coming off of October Sky, possibly saving him for Bubble Boy in this movie? Charlie Hunnam, you couldn't find him. He was already breaking.
$500.
Felt that Chris Klein's character was integral to such a huge piece of the movie, and he kind of brings it all down a little bit. He even delivers the most important line of the movie about the act feeling like warm apple pie. If that's
I thought it was "Suck Me Beautiful." I'm sorry.
But you know what, Joseph? If that's the biggest complaint, then this movie definitely ranks up there. I think it's a top 10 high school movie. Absolutely. We got MILF. I mean, like I said, it gave birth to a whole subcategory of internet searches. We got this one time at band camp, and it was just Mother's Day a couple of weeks ago. It's fairly genuine to the high school experience, says a guy whose pick is about a time traveling car. This is genuine. This is genuine.
I find it crazy that you think that this is a genuine experience. That this movie, American Pie, is more genuine. The guy, what's his name, Stifler, drinking semen out of a beer. Cup of beer.
It's probable, right? There are a ton of high school movies. American Pie has to be, I think, in the top 10, definitely top 3 of the 90s. Good selection, Joseph. I think when we talk about high school movies, when they took a turn, this is when it happened. And for like the next 8 years, we got some decent ones. What do you think, Bob?
I think when we mentioned this movie, it's one of my favorite movies, high school movies of all time, by the way. Talk about like not being as realistic, certain scenes, but I mean, it's going to happen. So it's going to be over the top. And that's part of the reason why we like it, because it's an over the top National Lampoon movie in American Pie. They made a high school movie. It is great cast. What's crazy is you would think that this cast, like I talk about the cast, Can't Hardly Wait and all the shit they did after the fact. These guys kind of went downhill after the fact, which is terrible. I mean, besides Allison Hannigan and Natasha Lyonne, yeah. I mean, what the fuck did Jason Biggs do? He played some loser, and Sean William Scott played the same fucking guy over and over. Of course, Chris Klein can't do a fucking country accent, and he had an addiction. Tara Reid, we're not even going to go there with Tara Reid and what she did and all her craziness. But yeah, Eugene Levy, best character in this movie. I love this movie. It's the outlandish scenes of what makes this movie. It's the fucking the pie in the counter. It's the webcam scene that everybody's watching. It's the sock over the parents walking in with him with the sock. It's the feeding Finch, laxative, so he takes a shit in front of everybody at the school. It's the prom night, and all of a sudden, Chris Klein is now. Well, I have to be so insensitive. It's not about get the fuck out of here, dude. You're talking about warm apple pie 1 minute, and then you're always so insensitive. It's a shitty. I don't like. I didn't like his character very much, but it's a great movie overall. It's funny. It's out there. It's made to be over the top and hilarious. You know what I mean? It's not very realistic. Rand, I don't know about your high school experience and none of our friends were talking about pies or screwing chicks on webcam. That was different. But I do think that it's a hilarious movie. It was made to be over the top and funny, and that's why we love it, because over the top and funny. You're not supposed to really learn anything to the next step. Give me a fucking break. It's just supposed to be a really funny, raunchy high school movie, and that's what it was. And if you look at it at that point of view, then it's definitely top 3. Or top 5 all-time high school movies. You know what I mean? There's no lesson there. There's no lesson to be learned. It's just funny and raunchy and what you're looking for as a high school student.
We could not afford to fuck pies in my house because, we didn't grow up. We didn't grow up with a lot of money, so if one of us fucked a pie, that was like dessert for the week.
What about the country crock, goddammit?
Maybe in some Cool Whip, you can dip your balls in there, but that's about it.
I'm fucking with a Cool Whip, Randall.
It's for a Cool Whip.
But no, I mean, good selections. These are all great high school movies. And of course, we talked about the relatability factor and how it helps us to connect to these characters. And final thoughts on high school movies.
I think we saw two good or what we found to be good or funny generations of movies, which were the 80s ones and the 90s. Well, three actually, well, there wasn't too many 90s. It was more the late 90s because we had like our selections like Bob's and mine, and then what followed after it in the early 2000s and things like that. I hope that these new movies today have some meaning behind them and they reach the intended audience, the kids that are the age of who the characters are supposed to be portraying, because I think that would be awesome. And as fondly as we talk about these movies that we just did right now, I hope that someday, the movies that are being made today, which I don't know too many of them, I don't think they get as big a release as the movies that we did. Like, remember when American Pie came out? Like, and then, oh, fuck, American Pie 2 came out. They were massive releases and trailers and commercials for them. I don't see a lot of that nowadays. So I know they're out there, and the kid and the young adults that are watching them, the kids, I guess, the teenagers, however you want to look at it, I hope they're enjoying them. That's all I can say.
The high school movie, man, I think it's a very underrated movie. I think it just kind of gives us a nice little glimpse back into maybe some of the things that we experience or some of the things maybe our friends experience. I love the relatability factor that all of them have, that these are my favorite kind of movies. I hope that they don't stop making these type of movies for the kids, like the teens these days, the ones that are in high school, the ones that are about to graduate. Like, I would love for them to be able to look back on a movie and be like, man, that's what my high school was like when I was there. That's what, I can relate to that scene or that breakup or being in love with that girl. Like, I hope that they continue to make movies like this, because these movies, man, even the ones like The Breakfast Club, they have a little bit to offer for all of us, all three of us, and a lot of our audience. And I hope that this new graduating class, has something to fall back on, or has a movie to look back on and be like, man, that's just like my high school years, man. It was so good. It was just like that. Or it was crazy like that. Or it was funny like that. And just a word of advice to anybody who's listening, who's actually going to graduate from high school this year: don't feel like your high school problems are really that bad, because when you get into the real world, you're in for a fucking rude awakening. All these high school problems are nothing compared to what you're going to face in the real world. And I hope that you all don't want to grow up too quickly. I think that these movies keep you young, and they want to watch them as much as you can.
Thank you, Harrison Butker. Okay, yeah. So
you're the only one that got that reference, by the way.
So, I'm looking at, because we talked about 80s and 90s movies for the most part, and I'm looking at some of these movies that have been released within the past 20 years that we didn't talk about. And if you guys want to chime in with a word or two about any of these movies, feel free. The Girl Next Door, Euro Trip, John Tucker Must Die.
Euro Trip was good.
Juno. Was good. And we talked about...
Was a good movie.
Juno was a good movie. Charlie Bartlett, I like that movie. Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, it was okay. I Love You, Beth Cooper. That's a good movie. Easy.
No idea what that is.
Easy A. Easy A is a good movie. Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Didn't talk about that.
That was kind of like past our prime. Like, that's not our version of high school.
I mean, I like that movie. I like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, but I don't think they're in high school though.
I think they are. Even Easy A was like a light soda Diet Coke version of the Scarlet Letter, so it wasn't really too crazy. 21
Jump Street. Which was a fun movie. And then lastly, one movie I want to hype up, and we did mention this, but I don't think there's a funnier, if we were just doing teenage comedies, I don't think there's a funnier movie than Superbad. I don't think that movie gets talked about enough. I mean, to me, that's like top 3, probably a selection that I considered as well. I think Superbad is such a hilarious movie, and it doesn't get enough kudos to being a classic high school movie. We were lucky to live in a generation where we had the opportunity to watch classics before we attended high school. For me, the next big wave of high school movies in the late 90s and through the late 2000s came after I was gone from high school, but still had the same effect as far as interest and idealism was concerned. I mentioned Euphoria, and I just want to say this. Okay, writers and creators, you have proven that you can write teens, but make them funny again. COVID is over. Make them joyous, adventurous, and funny again. Get them off of TikTok and back into theaters, and I promise you it will work. Just give us universal truths, enduring struggles, explore themes, and be funny, and you got yourself a great high school movie. You will always have an audience with these films. So make something worthy. Don't try and bullshit them or any audience members who just want to see a present representation of themselves or want to reflect on the past. These movies are for everybody. Like I said, Superbad was way after we graduated high school, but we enjoyed it. It is still an all-time classic. These movies can endure. They just have to be done right. That's our show, everyone. Listeners, we'd love to hear from you. Hit us up and let us know what you think the best high school movie of all time is. Most importantly, let us know what you think about the show. You may reach us at formidableopponents@gmail.com and follow us on all forms of social media by searching for Formidable Opponents. We want to thank Creative Little Pill for her great artwork. Please follow her on Instagram at Creative Little Pill. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on any podcast platform you're listening to us on. And join us next episode. We'll be back with Worst Lead Singer of the 90s. So for Bob and
That's
Joseph,
gonna be a good one.
we'll see y'all next week.
Kind of
Nobody drink the beer. The beer has gone bad. Nobody said party.